There are mass protests everywhere in the Middle East right now as millions of people, if not tens of millions of people in the Middle East are out there protesting the Trump regime and the Netanyahu regime. What you saw there at the beginning of this video was a 1,000,000-person protest in Baghdad, where there were Shiite clerics calling for Iraq to join the war on Iran's side against the United States and Israel. I'll show you more B-roll of this massive protest. I mean, quite literally, it's like hundreds of thousands. They're saying millions of people. You could judge for yourself this crowd size out there to see a Shiite cleric and the people of Iraq showing solidarity with the people of Iran. And so for those saying that Donald Trump and Netanyahu were going to be greeted like heroes in this region, all they have done is sparked further sectarian rifts, and you're seeing the Shiite community now across the Middle East stand up and hold these protests. And again, it's not just in Baghdad, Iraq. I mean, we're seeing them in Syria. We're seeing them in Yemen. The Houthis were out there. I mean, hundreds of thousands of protesters, as many people as the eyes could possibly see. And then, by the way, even in Tel Aviv, in Israel, you had mass protests against the Netanyahu regime demanding that the war end in Israel. Let me show you that one right now. I mean, this is as their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been making videos himself all day, bragging that we, Israel and the United States, have destroyed 70% of Iran's steel production capacity. Today, we attack their petrochemical plants. We will continue to crush them, is what Netanyahu said, as he and Donald Trump have also destroyed a lot of civilian areas. Also, Beirut in Lebanon basically completely destroyed the suburban areas and civilian areas. Take a look at some of these protests erupting in Tel Aviv, calling for an end to the war. Play this clip. And here's how they were talking about it on Al Jazeera, these mass protests that are taking place in Tel Aviv right now. I just wanted to give you that perspective because you may not be hearing about that really anywhere else. Here, play this clip.
Hundreds of people took to the streets in Israel on Saturday to demand an end to the war in Iran. Protesters gathered in Tel Aviv's main square, as well as in several major cities, including Jerusalem and Haifa. Demonstrations are held every Saturday against the Netanyahu government. Well, Rob McBride joins us now live from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Rob, so Israel has been coming under attack from Iran, from Hezbollah, and from the Houthis in Yemen. Meanwhile, we've heard an Israeli official saying that they're ready to hit Iranian energy facilities and that they're just waiting for the green light to be given from the U.S. What else are you learning about all this?
I'll go back to Baghdad right now, and we'll turn the sound on for this one over here and show you again this massive crowd size. Let's play it.
أيها الأحبة أيها الأحبة أيها الأحبة أيها الأخوة الأعزاء.
Take a look right here, the protests across Syrian cities in the past week or so. You've seen these protests on an almost a daily basis right here. They're both protesting Trump and Netanyahu's war in Iran and attacks in the Middle East. And they're also protesting the Israeli law allowing executions of Palestinian captives only. Here, play this clip. Now I'll show you this massive Houthi rally as the Houthis are getting prepared to potentially shut down the Red Sea as Trump's unlawful war in Iran continues to escalate. And again, I mean, Donald Trump believes that this is a sign of, that the people are submitting to his will. It just objectively seems like the opposite, and any potential ability to rally people around America when Donald Trump's out there framing this as an attack not on the Iranian regime, right? That's not how Trump and Netanyahu have been framing this. They've been framing it as an attack on Iranians, the Iranian civilization, to send Iran and the civilization of Iran back to the Stone Age, and thus people who didn't even support the Ayatollah and the Iranian regime, and who may have been willing and to not just to join, potentially with America, but be helpful in overthrowing the Ayatollah. This has Trump's strategy of making this about U.S. civilization destroying Iran civilization is the worst approach possible. Take a look at this massive Houthi rally right here in Sabine Square. Hundreds of thousands of people there. Play this clip. Now, I'll give you this insight because I want to give you the perspective of people in this region. So this is Hassan T. Alassan. He is a senior fellow for Middle East policy at the International Institute of Strategic Studies. And here in this interview, he says, look, Trump has chosen the worst of all possible options for the Gulf states, a gratuitous escalation that will result in more Iranian attacks against the Gulf states while leaving the Strait of Hormuz hostage to Iran. Listen to what he has to say. Play this clip.
Trump has really chosen the worst of all possible options and approaches for the Gulf states. He has chosen to escalate gratuitously against Iran's civilian infrastructure, pledging to bomb them back to the Stone Age and to take out their electricity and oil infrastructure. And we know exactly how Iran is going to respond to that. They will respond much more forcefully against the Gulf states than they will against U.S. Or Israeli interests. So in a sense, he's chosen a path of escalation that is going to provoke Iranian retaliation against Gulf interests on the one hand. And at the same time, this is a path of escalation that does not involve liberating the Strait of Hormuz from Iranian extortion. So on the one hand, a massive cost that the Gulf states are likely to absorb as a result of U.S.-Israeli escalation in Iran without the benefit of securing the Strait of Hormuz against Iranian extortion. He could have chosen an escalatory path that would involve securing the Strait. He could have chosen a de-escalatory path that would have spared the Gulf states further Iranian attacks, but he has chosen really the worst of both outcomes. I think Trump is seeing this quite narrowly from the Israeli interest, given that Israel doesn't have a massive direct stake in the Strait of Hormuz, and that Israel wants to keep on degrading Iran's military, industrial, economic capacity for as much as possible. I think this is the approach that ultimately President Trump seems to have adopted for the next phase of this conflict.
And then you have Trump and his entire regime turning this into like a religious war, like a crusade. And that's the language that Trump's been using. Trump said, glory be to God. Trump goes, remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. Glory be to God, Donald J. Trump. And again, saying glory be to God, essentially saying Allah Akbar, but saying glory be to God in a sense of Donald Trump and Hegseth saying Jesus this, Jesus that. It creates this broader religious crusade war. And all you've done by approaching it that way, the worst way to approach it is you've inspired the billions and millions of Shiites, in the Middle East and potentially, others to rally and say, no, we're not going to take that. Here you have Donald. Just take a look at the stuff that Donald Trump's been saying just in the past week or so. With a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait, take the oil and make a fortune. It would be a gusher for the world. Keep the oil, anyone? Our military, the greatest and most powerful by far anywhere in the world, hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. New regime leadership knows what has to be done and has to be done fast. Big day in Iran. Many long sought after targets have been taken out and destroyed by our great military, the finest and most lethal in the world. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their power plants, starting with the biggest one first. I'm pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had over the last 2 days very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities. That's when he wanted to manipulate the market. And then Donald Trump's like, I will postpone my intended strikes pending our communications and our negotiations. And there were none. I mean, the Trump regime has been rolling out Paula White-Kang, this religious radical who like runs the faith group of Donald Trump's, which is like the White House faith leader. And again, she frames things in terms of like, holy wars and religious wars. And then she also is like, people don't know how religious Donald Trump is. He went to Saturday and Sunday school 3 times a week. She says 3 times a week.
Oh, Laura, as you said, this is probably my favorite subject to talk about. First off, to give honor to God and to President Trump for being bold and unwavering with his faith. Many people don't know, like you do, and say hello to Eric and everyone in the family about the upbringing of President Trump, that he went to sometimes 3 times a week to, he said it depended on the teacher, to Saturday school, Sunday school, church. It was at Norman Vincent Peale's. Church was a big part of his life, of course.
Then you have Lindsey Graham saying the following when he was asked this question. Here, play this clip.
Well, Senator.
Buddy, how you doing?
How you doing? Is there a foreign war you don't support?
I support wars that make America safer.
Thank you, sir.
Meanwhile, you have the leader of Iran's parliament putting out the following comment. If Iran does not receive a credible signal by today, he wrote this yesterday, so today, of Trump reconsidering an attack on Iran's infrastructure, Iran will preemptively, irreversibly, and on a massive scale target Saudi electricity and oil production infrastructure, as well as that of the Israeli regime. Iran has so far refrained from exercising this option in order to avoid entering an irreversible infrastructure war and a Ukrainization of the region. But the time for this restraint will end in the next 24 hours. The spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry responds to Donald Trump's use of this civilization clash language and says, throughout history, Iranians have been the guardians of Verdansk and Cyprus. Today as well, every Iranian drawing from the deep-rooted wisdom embedded in their culture and a meaningful practice suited to their era plants a tree. Let the darkness lost in the delusion of understanding today and planning for tomorrow descend into the ravings of the Stone Age. The nation of love plants a sapling of green that will spread its branches and leaves to tomorrow, destroying the great bridges which stand as steadfast symbols of ingenuity, commitment, and tireless efforts of Iranian engineers and workers, does not elevate the saboteurs. This war crime in the style of ISIS terrorists, accompanied by similar attacks on vital infrastructure in Iran, makes an undeniable truth even more evident. Their ultimate goal is destruction of Iran, a goal that they have relentlessly pursued for 5 decades. But Iran today stands firmer, prouder, and greater than ever. And then they were posting photos like this of Donald Trump disintegrating. And then we saw the strikes. We saw Iranian strikes on Kuwaiti infrastructure, Iranian strikes on Bahrain's infrastructure. The Bahrainian petroleum company BAPCO was hit hard. Folks, things are escalating. And as you heard before, Donald Trump's strategy here seems to be the worst possible option. And I agree that it's the worst possible option. I mean, what the hell is he doing? It's ridiculous. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks everybody for watching.
Behind the gold gates of Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump was throwing a party that looked like a dystopian fever dream, while the country outside is burning. Here's the backdrop. Americans are struggling with record foreclosures, crushing rent, and grocery prices that keep climbing. Protests are erupting in cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul as federal agents flood the streets. Now to the scene that has people stunned. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump hosted a lavish party where guests wore creepy dog masks and danced as if nothing in the world was wrong. It looked surreal, grotesque, and completely disconnected from reality. This was happening as ICE and Border Patrol agents were deployed in U.S. cities, using flashbangs, pepper spray, and unknown noxious gases on civilians. People in Minnesota were literally being gassed in the streets. The contrast couldn't be sharper. While Americans live paycheck to paycheck, Trump's inner circle flaunted wealth behind velvet ropes. Let them eat cake, or apparently, let them eat dog food. At the same time, Trump escalated international chaos. Denmark and Greenland sent their foreign ministers to Washington, only to be told by J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio that the U.S. would not take it easy. The message was blunt. America wants Greenland. The response was immediate. France, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and Canada began coordinating special forces exercises to bolster Greenland's defenses in case of a U.S. invasion. Only 4% of Americans support taking Greenland by force. And while allies prepare for the unthinkable, Trump was busy posting insults online. He claimed Minneapolis food assistance businesses have no cleanliness and nothing except fraud, projecting every accusation onto others while ignoring the crisis at home. Then came Detroit. During a visit to Ford workers, Trump reportedly gave a union worker the middle finger and said, "F you," after being called a pedophile protector. That worker was later suspended, but the United Auto Workers pushed back, saying even the president doesn't get to harass union labor. According to multiple reports from workers on the ground, something else stood out: Trump's body odor. Ford workers reportedly described it as bad breath mixed with feces, saying they couldn't forget it and were still talking about it days later. Putrid behavior, putrid optics, and according to witnesses, a putrid smell. Detroit couldn't stop talking about any of it. Meanwhile, new reporting shows Venezuelan oil revenue being funneled through bank accounts in Qatar. The explanation? Qatar is described as a neutral location where money can flow freely, raising obvious questions about who ultimately benefits. Trump also posted that he had a great conversation with Delcy Rodriguez, Venezuela's authoritarian vice president and right-hand figure to Nicolas Maduro. He praised her strength, even as pro-democracy opposition in Venezuela continues to be crushed. Then there's Iran. Trump publicly told Iranian protesters the U.S. had their backs, warning Tehran not to kill a single demonstrator. Since then, thousands may have been massacred, and Iranian airspace has gone eerily quiet amid threats of a single, decisive U.S. strike. Trump says he doesn't want a long war, only one strike that wipes everything out. History, of course, has something to say about that kind of thinking. Back at home, the political fallout is accelerating. Generation Z has swung dramatically away from Trump. In February 2025, his net approval among Gen Z was plus 10. Now it's negative 32, a 42-point collapse. Democrats' party ID advantage among Gen Z has tripled, jumping from 6 points to 20. It's the largest shift of any demographic group. On Capitol Hill, reactions were blunt. A Democratic congressman called the union worker who confronted Trump an American hero. Another, when asked about the pedophile protector remark, said it was spoken in a factual sense. So that's where we are. Dog mask parties at Mar-a-Lago, cities being gassed, allies preparing defenses against the United States, workers insulted, protesters abandoned, and a country wondering how any of this became normal. If this feels unreal, that's because the next chapter may be even worse, and it's already unfolding.